Hello again, and welcome back to another video. This one's a bit of a slightly different one in that I'm going to tell you a story. Over on the Facebook page, we've been asked a couple of times now, how did we get our land? And I suppose that how we got our land combines in with how did we start and what got us to the place where we are now. That bleeping you can hear, by the way, I'm just going around and just testing the electric fence because we had a fox strike last night, so I'm just going around and making sure it's all okay. And yeah, I will get back to the story in just a second, but I've also got to turn off the water because the drinker in with the chicks in the brooder is leaking, and that's never good. So I've lifted it out and I've let the chicks go. So anyway, our land here. Well, what have we got? What is it? And how did we get it? So if we go back a few years, we used to live somewhere else, and we had a house with a reasonable sized garden, but the garden was plenty large enough that we was able to keep some chickens in the garden. And we were then asked, would you like some ducks? And we said, hey, yeah, why not? They're just as easy to keep as chickens, so yeah, let's have some ducks as well. So we ended up with some chickens and some ducks, and it was just a little backyard setup. I think we had 2 ducks and 3 chickens, 4 chickens, something like that anyway. Oh, I'm walking uphill. Every time I walk up this hill and talk, it gets out of breath. So anyway, we had that little setup, and then we decided to move, and we moved down to the coast because we wanted to be near the coast. The kids were of an age where we was able to still move their schools without it causing too many issues for them. And we ended up down here in glorious Sussex. So we've got Hastings to the one side of us, 1066, the Battle of Hastings and all that lot, although it didn't actually happen in Hastings, it happened just outside of Hastings in a little town by the name of Battle. They obviously came up with an original name there. And just the other side of us, if you look straight over there, you can't see it tonight because the clouds are rolled in, is a place called Rye, which is an ancient town. So anyway, we moved down here, and we had to bring down our horse with us as well because it's part of the family. So the horse came down, and the wife done the normal wifey thing of looking over Facebook, and she found on Facebook a yard with some stables that we was able to place the horse. So we placed the horse on there, and it was fine. It was all right. It was one of these type of places where the ladies all gossip about each other, normal horsey stuff. If you've ever been involved with horses, you'll understand what I mean. So anyway, they were on there, and that went fine. Then the landowner came down one day and said, I'm going to sell up. I want the money. And we was like, oh, okay, fine, we'll start looking elsewhere. He said, but before it goes onto the market, you lot have got to be off. Because apparently he'd been told by the estate agents, or real estate agents if you're in America, that if the pictures had glorious green fields, it would look so much more appealing to anybody wanting to come in and buy. Whereas my thinking is, if you're going to buy an equestrian property, you'd expect it to have equestrian stuff on there, including horses, and you'd expect the fields to have been used so you don't have to come in and worry about ragwort, having to top the fields and all that. Anyway, so long story cut short, he said he was going to sell, and we had to go. So I turned around to my wife and I said, with the best wisdom in the world, because I'm the driver and we have to drive here, it's a little bit too far to walk or ride a bike or anything. I said, if we're going to do that, then the next yard we go to, I have to be able to keep chickens, or else otherwise I'm going to stop because I'm getting bored. I don't want to keep on doing this every single day. So my wife said, okay. So her and her friend, they got onto Google Maps, and they started looking, zooming in the different places. Now they were offered somewhere that had what's called a livery yard again, so there would have been other people there with their horses, and it would have been more click click click. as it is with those places. You're either in the click or you're out of the click. It's one or the other. So you can see we've been joined by this little beauty. He is a beauty when you take off all of the fly stuff that's on him at the minute. So anyway, yeah, they started looking and they couldn't find anywhere, and we started driving around different places looking for anywhere that looked slightly abandoned, that it hadn't been looked after that year. Like, you can always tell whenever you drive past a field. It used to be back in the olden days back here in the UK that if you drove past a field and it looked abandoned, you're just like, that's the set aside land, and they used to get a premium. I'm not sure if they still get it, I'm not sure, but they used to get the premium if they just let the land for a year and just left it fallow. So we were looking around all over the place, and we were searching everywhere within the whole area, trying to find somewhere an empty field, and we couldn't find one. Then, by some quirk of nature, I don't know if you can see it, just in the distance there is a gate. There's a gate just down there. Exactly opposite that gate, well, if you go out that gate, you go down maybe 5 meters and there's a road, and exactly opposite is the entrance to where we used to keep our horses. We drove past this here twice a day, every day, didn't even spot it. Then we spotted it. Then we realised it was up about there with all of this knapweed stuff. Then we looked on Google Earth and we spotted buildings. 2 buildings. And then we thought, we need to find the owner. So wifey came up to me and she said, hubby, please write us a letter. You're so good at writing letters. Put it down into words that we would like to move our horses onto this land and that we would like to live happily ever after there. So I said, okay. So I got on the computer and I tapped it up and I printed off about 10 copies. And all it was basically saying was, we've seen your field. Do you own it? If you don't own it, do you know who does own it? If you do, could you pass on my details, please? Because I'd like to rent it if nobody else is interested and if nobody else is doing anything with it. So I gave her these letters, and we are pretty unpopulated around here. Like, there's a house there, there's a couple over the other side of the road, but obviously this side of the road, this field, you would have thought it would be a house this side. But over to our left there's farmers' fields, and we know who owns those. And we know where they live and everything, but they weren't 100% sure who owned this. And to our right there's a nature reserve and a few other fields, so you're kind of stuck as to who might own it. So anyway, my wife and her friend, they came up, they drove around, and it took a bit of courage from them, but I admit they'd done well. They drove up and they started asking people, and the second person they asked was the right person to ask, because they said, I don't own it, I'm not the owner, but I am the manager and I manage it. See, we've got rabbits just jumping all over the place there. We do plan to rent it later this year because it needs a little bit of work doing to it, and so it will become available, but not right now. So wife turns on her charm, her friend turns on her charm and says, look, if you can let us in right now, we'll start paying rent right now, and we can move our horses in, we can move everything in, and we will start using the land, and those little jobs that need doing, we can slowly do them as we work through, because we'll be able to do it. Because even though it was up like that high, we would have been able to start working through. Apparently the land had been left empty for about 5 years or so. So they said, yeah, okay, you can move in, start paying rent. So we did. We had the kids with wheelbarrows just bringing stuff straight over the road, and then we had one weekend where the kids brought along their friends as well and decided to join in with just moving stuff from our old stables over to the new stables. So while we were there and doing that, we had a word with them and said that we'd like to have a couple of chickens down here, because we've kept them in the past and because we'd like to keep them again. Would that be all right? They said, yeah, sure, of course you can. And we was like, brilliant, thank you. Would you mind if we had a duck or two as well? Yeah, crack on, whatever you like, just be wary of the foxes and that there's everything else around here and that the land has been empty for so many years. That was a year ago. pretty much, what are we in now? End of June. I think it was about May last year that we done that, and this is where we are now today. So we're up to 30, I want to say 38 chickens, but we obviously lost a couple last night, so we're 36 chickens plus growers and what we've got at home in the incubator. We got the geese, we got the ducks, we've got all of that. And what's happened now basically is we've done the last year and we've built up the infrastructure of it. The friend who was with the wife with her horse actually came up to us about a month ago and said, I need to move him back to a different type of yard where other people are able to look after him and other things are able to happen and this and that and the other. So I'm going. I'm really, really sorry, but I'm going. We was like, oh dear, that's a shame. Very, very secretly in the back of my head, I was going, yes, yes, yes. Lovely lady, great person to be around, but she was a vegetarian. So I always had to be careful whenever I'd done the culling of the birds to make sure she wasn't around and everything else like that. But it also means that now we're at that stage where this whole lot is mine and the wife's. We can do what we like, when we like, without having to constantly run it past somebody else. So for example, you can see I've extended down the bottom here and I've extended up the top here. In the past, I would have had to have asked the wife would have had to have asked her friend, you know, we would have had to explain where we were going, what we were doing and everything else like that, and get their approval, because it's only polite to. It's not because we had to, it's because it was polite to. Obviously, if I just come in and I took over this whole swathe of land, that wouldn't have been very polite. So we were being polite. But now we don't need to be polite. I just need to ask the wife. So when I want to expand, we can expand. So what we're doing, I'll take a walk up to the top of the hill in just a second, but I'll just explain what we're doing. We're currently expanded down to about there, that green pole just in there. It looks like I'm stood so far back, but I'm not stood far back. So we've expanded forward to about there. So that bit there, so this area is going to be closed off across there. We're going to close it off. That will be for growers. I've then got to expand it this way and do a bit for the 9 ducks we've currently got in the brooder, and expand it this way and do a final bit for this year, which will be for the turkeys. But what I'll do is I'll just expand it all the way down, let the chickens rip it to pieces in there, and then we'll split it all up and get it all done. So yeah, so now we're at that stage all of a sudden where we've just been given all of this freedom. So you can also see we're down to 1 beehive. The plan next year is to have 3 beehives. Number of birds, because we've been asked for birds, we're actually at that stage now where people are coming to us and saying, have you got any birds? So we're going to increase slowly the number of birds. But if I come up here, I will show you the area we've got. I'm sorry if it's jumping about. It's I don't have a gimbal for it. I just have a strap that goes onto my chest. So, right, let's go all the way up to the top and I'll show you. So this is at the top. This way it gets a bit flatter. Just behind those trees is a school for the horses. So it's got all the wood chippings down. We're just spreading those out. That's one of the jobs that had to be done. So now this view on a clear day is absolutely stunning. You can see right the way across to the old town of Rye. If you're not from around here, look up on the internet, RYE, and then you want to look up the Dolphin Street in Rye. There's a big wind turbine farm just outside of it, and you're able to see all the wind turbines going. God, I'm out of breath. And then also on a really clear day, you can see the Dungeness power station. That is just like an area that's in like a post-apocalyptic landscape. If you ever get a chance of going down to Dungeness, go. It is well worth it. We've been up there a couple of times, and you just drive in there and you just sort of think, this is just a nuclear wasteland, and then there's a nuclear power station. And you can also see White Cliffs. They're not the White Cliffs of Dover, although they are close to Dover. Dover is just around the coast a little bit, so you can't quite see them. So yeah, just down there's the sea, and then all of this is inland, Because we're on the edge of Kent, you probably can't see it with this camera, but just in the distance there is what's called an oast house. And then there's an oast house down there, and then there's a few others scattered around. Those are back from the old days of the hops and all the brewing and everything else like that. So yeah, oh, and the last thing is just behind those trees there is a pond. It's a natural pond. We could use it. The only problem is the sides are really steep down into it, and there's nowhere which has got easy flat access that we could allow the birds to go into it. So that is it. That's our story. That's our land, how we got it, what we're doing with it, how we started, and just basically how we ended up here. So if you've got an idea for anything else that you would like to hear us talk about, then please do let us know, because we quite like talking about it and explaining to other people how we got here and what we've done. Any questions, leave them down below. I suppose the first question is going to be is how would you recommend somebody started out if they've got nothing and no idea what they're doing and they can't start off at home? That's a tricky one. I would say go and speak to your local council. If you're in the UK, there's allotments. Virtually every single council has got allotments. If you're not in the UK, that's a kind of like a community garden area where all the land is split up into little parcels of land, and you're able to rent a little parcel of land, and it can be your garden, your fruit and veg for the year. So yeah, if you're in the UK, go and speak to your local council. Say you would like an allotment. Lots of them have got waiting lists, and it's normally April every year where they update their list and then they issue out the new ones. Grab yourself one of those, ask them if you can put some chickens onto it. If you can't put chickens onto it, put bees onto it. If you can't put bees onto it, grow vegetables on it. There's always something you can come up with. Excuse me, that's just my phone. Yeah, so there's all these different things that you could try on an allotment if you can't do it at home. Start small and then expand out and see how you go from there. So cheers for watching, and until the next video, bye bye.